There's a specific kind of confidence damage that doesn't come from one big rejection. It comes from thousands of small ones, accumulated slowly, over years. And most people who've experienced it don't have a name for what happened to them. They just know that something feels different now, something that used to be available, a kind of ease, a basic sense of being worth someone's attention, has gotten quieter. And the silence where it used to be is one of the more disorienting things that can happen to a person who is otherwise doing fine. Today, that gets a name because there is a documented, measurable psychological effect that prolonged exposure to evaluative dating platforms produces in the people who use them. It is not a character flaw. It is not evidence of actual undesirability. It is what happens when a human nervous system spends years inside a system that was designed structurally, architecturally to make evaluation feel personal. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what happened, why it happened, and what the difference is between damage that's structural and damage that's real. That distinction is going to matter. So let's start with something you might already be feeling. That quiet sense that something shifted in you, and you're not entirely sure when or how. Think back to who you were before the apps. Not the idealized version. Not the past self that had everything figured out. Just the version of you that existed before you started submitting yourself to this particular kind of evaluation on a regular basis. Most people, when they do this, notice something. There was a kind of ease that existed then that doesn't quite exist now. Not arrogance, not certainty, just a baseline assumption that connection was possible. That if you met the right person in the right context, something could grow. You didn't walk into a room calculating your odds. You didn't catastrophize a 2-hour gap in text responses. You didn't find yourself doing the math on your own face, trying to figure out what the data was telling you. That version of you wasn't naive. They just hadn't yet been through years of a system that translates human desirability into something that can be sorted, ranked, and swiped past in under a second. Here is what's important about that contrast and why it matters that you're noticing it. The difference between then and now isn't what you've learned about yourself. It's what the apps taught you to believe about yourself. And those are not the same thing. The before version wasn't wrong. The after version isn't more accurate. Something happened in between, and that something has a mechanism, which brings us to what these platforms actually do. Not philosophically, but mechanically. Let's slow this down for a second and talk about what the apps actually are. Not philosophically, mechanically. A swipe-based dating platform is, at its structural core, an appearance evaluation engine. The first decision, the one that determines whether any connection is even possible, is made in under 3 seconds based on photographs, before a single word has been exchanged. That is the foundation. Everything else is built on top of a split-second visual judgment made by a stranger who is simultaneously evaluating dozens of other people in a context specifically designed to encourage speed over attention. Research on this consistently shows something that the industry does not advertise. Prolonged use of appearance-based evaluation platforms is associated with measurable decreases in self-esteem, body image, and self-worth, independent of how many matches a person receives. Read that again. Independent of how many matches they receive, meaning the damage is not primarily from the rejections. The damage is from the process itself. The mechanism works like this. Every time you open the app, you are submitting yourself voluntarily, repeatedly, to a form of evaluation that is faster, harsher, and more anonymous than almost any other social context a human being encounters. The brain is very good at learning from patterns, and the pattern it learns here is, I am something that gets assessed. I am something that gets passed over. I am something whose value is determined by a response I cannot control and cannot fully understand. Over months, that lesson doesn't stay in the app. It starts traveling. It shows up in how you walk into a room, in how quickly you apologize, in whether you believe, at a cellular level, that your presence is something people want. That's the thing nobody says out loud. The apps don't just affect how you feel about dating. They affect how you feel about yourself. And here's where it gets interesting. Because the confidence that erodes is not the part that was wrong about you. It was the part that was right. And that's the shift that deserves our full attention, because it's where things get both uncomfortable and clarifying. Here is the part that is going to feel uncomfortable before it feels useful. At some point, and this happens to almost everyone who uses the apps for long enough, you stopped experiencing the platform as a tool. You started experiencing it as a mirror. The matches became data. The silences became evidence. The patterns became a verdict. And the verdict was about you, not about the algorithm, not about the platform's design, not about the specific psychological state of the stranger who swiped left at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. About you. The pattern doesn't mean what you think it means, because here's what was actually happening. You were looking into a funhouse mirror and trying to determine your actual dimensions from the reflection. A funhouse mirror doesn't show you what you look like. It shows you what you look like after the mirror has done something specific to the image. The output is real. It's genuinely what the mirror produced. But it is not accurate. The apps produce a real output, real matches, real silences, real patterns, but the output is not an accurate measurement of your desirability, your depth, your capacity for connection, or the experience of actually knowing you. It is the output of a system that was designed for engagement, not accuracy, that optimizes for session length, not for genuine compatibility, that rewards certain photographs over others based on criteria that have almost nothing to do with what makes a person worth loving. You've probably already felt this part, the sense that the version of yourself that exists in the real world, in a conversation, in a room, in an actual relationship, is nothing like the version that gets evaluated in 3 seconds from a photograph. That feeling is not delusion. That feeling is accurate perception. The before version of you, the one with the ease, the baseline assumption of connection, wasn't overestimating. That version was reading correctly. The after version learned to read from a broken instrument, and a broken instrument, consulted long enough, will eventually convince you that the problem is with what's being measured. That is what happened to your confidence. Not a flaw revealed, a distortion accumulated. If this is landing somewhere real, if you're recognizing not just the pattern but the specific cost of it, there's a 21-day guided process in the description, built exactly for this. It's called From Exhausted to Ready, and it doesn't ask you to date differently. It asks you to recover the version of yourself that existed before the system got to work on how you see yourself. Not a makeover, a retrieval. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. Now, because this video owes you more than just a diagnosis, let's talk about what the path forward actually looks like. And here's where the internal objection usually arrives. The one that sounds like, but the apps are just showing me how people actually respond to me. If I'm not getting matches, isn't that real information? That's a fair question. It deserves a direct answer. Yes. The apps are showing you how people respond to you in that specific context. The way a photograph performs in a 3-second evaluation by a stranger on a platform designed to manufacture endless choice, that is real information. It is also extraordinarily narrow information, measured in conditions specifically calibrated to minimize the qualities that actually make connection possible. Warmth, humor, the particular energy of someone who is genuinely curious about you, the sound of a voice, the way someone holds themselves in a room, all of that is absent from what the apps measure. So yes, the data is real, but real data from a broken instrument is still broken data. The recovery from this kind of confidence damage is not, then, about getting better at the instrument. It is not about better photographs or a more compelling bio, or returning to the apps with a stronger strategy. Recovery starts in a different place entirely. It starts with rebuilding what the apps replaced, an internal referencing system. Before the apps, most people gauge their social value through lived experience, through actual interactions, through the real responses of real people in real contexts, through the accumulated evidence of being known and still chosen. The apps replaced all of that with a number, with a match rate, with a response time, with a quantified verdict. Recovery means returning the referencing system to its original source, which means real contexts, actual interactions. The evidence of being in a room with someone who responds to the version of you that can't be captured in a photograph. Not immediately, not all at once, but the direction is clear, away from the mirror that distorts and back toward the contexts that actually see you. That is not a small thing. That is, in fact, the beginning of the whole thing. If you want to go deeper on what that process actually looks like, the resource in the description was built specifically for this moment. Link is there, and in the pinned comment. When did you first notice the confidence had changed? Was there a specific moment? Or did it arrive so gradually you almost missed it? Before you close this video, there's one thing worth sitting with. You came into this carrying a specific story. The story was something like, I've been doing this long enough that the results are probably telling me something true. Something about how I register with people. Something about what I'm worth in this particular market. That story has evidence. I'm not going to tell you it doesn't. The pattern is real. The erosion is real. The quiet confidence that used to be there and isn't quite there now That loss is real. But here is what I want to leave you with. The story about why is wrong. You were not being accurately measured. You were being processed by a system that was never designed to see you. Not the full version of you. Not the version that exists in conversation, in presence, in the actual texture of knowing and being known. That system produced real outputs. And you, because you are someone who takes things seriously and tries to learn from what you experience, took those outputs seriously. That makes complete sense. It also means that what you lost wasn't revealed. It was taken. The confidence that went quiet over years of this, it did not leave because it was wrong to be there. It left because you were consulting a broken instrument so consistently that you eventually stopped trusting your own reading. That is recoverable. Not through another round of optimization. Not through a better strategy. Not through learning to want it less. Through the slow, unglamorous work of returning to the evidence that the apps were never equipped to provide. The version of you that is genuinely ready. Not healed, not fixed, not finished. Just done letting a distorted mirror tell them what they look like. That version is not far away. It is not a different person. It is this person with one thing changed. What they use as evidence. You were never the problem. You were just looking into the wrong mirror.